HUR Australia webinar, Better for Life, bringing health and wellness to older people through a multidisciplinary approach using funded options. It is great to welcome you all back again to our final webinar of 2021 to listen to our guest speakers sharing their knowledge. In the spirit of reconciliation, HUR Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. My name is Tore Karaharu-Husman and I'm from HUR Australia, and I will be your MC today. Now, a successful active aging model includes quite a few factors, from a detailed concept and staffing to all the gym design, and really making sure that you have a multidisciplinary allied health presence. This allied health service delivery also may be slowed down due to access to funding. Now, there are quite a few different federal and state funding programs. However, I personally think that it's like an alphabet soup. It's acronyms, and it's quite hard to mingle through the jungle of letters without understanding how to apply and how to make them work. And that's why some of these grants are often missed together with the cost savings. Now, one of the great success stories of health and wellness is Southern Cross Care, based in Southern Australia, but also Northern Territory and Victoria. Just last financial year, they actually delivered 108,000 hours of health and wellness services to 3,000 clients. Now, from the Southern Cross Care team, they also had their services manager, Joe Boylan, and Dr. Tim Henwood discussing in the Royal Commission about the importance of allied health and also how the funding could be working. Now, today we're very lucky to have team members from Southern Cross Care joining us. So we have physiotherapist Nick Petch, who's going to really talk about the importance of the multidisciplinary approach. And then we have Dr. Tim Henwood, who is the Group Manager for Community Wellness and Lifestyle, and then who will be discussing all the funding options. Now, before we get started, just a few house rules. During the webinar, all the microphones will be muted, and also the videos are going to be disabled. There is an important task, though, for all of you. So in the bottom, there is a Q&A section in the bottom of your screen. If you come up with any questions during the talks, please write your questions there. And at the end, when we have the panel, I will post those questions to our speakers. If we run out of time during the panel to respond to everything, we will then send the questions to the speakers and they can type up the questions and we will post them online. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Nick Petch, physiotherapist, with the title of his speech, Bringing Better Health and Wellness to Older Adults, the Importance of a Multidisciplinary Approach. Now, Nick is a physiotherapist currently working in community aged care with Southern Cross Care in South Australia. He has worked in aged care for the past 5 years, with further clinical experience in residential and transitional care. Nick has a strong interest in exercise and pain management for older adults, working to develop an optimal pathway for clients in the community to better their health, function, and also to reduce the risk of progression into disability or frailty. Nick also works closely with the Flinders University physiotherapy students, along with the new graduate physiotherapists, occupational therapist and podiatrist within Southern Cross Care. Welcome, Nick. It is now your turn to talk.
All right, thank you very much, Turi. I appreciate the introduction and thanks for having us on here today as well. As mentioned, I'll be talking a bit about the importance of a multidisciplinary approach and then the way we look to implement that here through Southern Cross. So Turi's given a bit of a background there on me, but just adding to that, with the 5 or 6 years I've been working with older adults, been able to have a good opportunity to see various settings and the way that really it can work well, and that's through from residential sites, and now into community, where I'm mostly based through the site here in Adelaide, but then also doing some on-road, seeing people outside of the clinic as well. All right. So just a bit about us and where we're based. So with our arm underneath Southern Cross Care is the health and wellness. We've got 3 established centres here in Adelaide, and one that's building up in Darwin as well. So that's kind of been growing over the last year or two, and we've got more plans developing sites here in Adelaide, near South Australia, in Mount Barker and Fleurieu. But our 3 main established sites here, the one I'm based at in North Plympton called the Pines, more central, the one west in Largs Bay, and the one east in Myrtle Bank. So been really lucky to, where I'm based at the Pines, have a brand new setup, a renovated build finishing last year, where we've had all the new HUR equipment put in, and the clients, staff alike have all really appreciated it. All of the sites are set up now with that HUR equipment, all these 3 established sites, all with full cardio-based equipment, some Pilates reformer-based free weights, and functional spaces as well. So we're really lucky to have a really nice setup where we are at the moment, and the HUR equipment's been a great addition with all of that. Also, we have 2 fully functioning hydrotherapy pools at the other 2 sites as well, which are a really valuable tool too. So just moving into our multidisciplinary team. So spread across those 3 established sites, we offer physio, exercise physiology, occupational therapy, massage therapy, podiatry, dietetics, social work, exercise science, and registered nurses as well. So all spread on site and in the clinic as well. And they work really well together. Just flowing into that, we can see here, this is just a flow chart about how our multidisciplines work together, and the close relationship we see. So we can see that physio, exercise physiology, occupational therapists are really closely linked, and often inter-refer back and forth very closely with each other. With the physio, exercise physiologists working closely with exercise, falls prevention, focusing on functional well-being and disease management, and as well as those musculoskeletal, neuromuscular, pain-based therapies as well. Outside of those 3 disciplines, we've got lots of options with massage, podiatry, social work, dietetics, all able to bring their own skills to give that full multidisciplinary approach. So while we are multidisciplinary, where we work within our own roles, we are very interdisciplinary, where those roles can sometimes be blurred, especially with physio and exercise physiology, that I've found that blurred line with exercise and therapy for that. So just moving into the benefits, I think it's well researched and well shown that the effects and the benefits of a multidisciplinary team. But from my perspective, more specifically, I found just improving that efficiency and outcomes of services. So having those clinicians being able to focus on their different aspects of a client's health, being able to identify those needs, and then we can bring that together and collaborate, giving that recommendation to just give that better outcome for the client in general. And obviously with better health outcomes, we're going to lead to a lot better client satisfaction, but also through team satisfaction. I think with the teams that I've worked with in the last few years, we've found that having that integration, that multidisciplinary approach, where we're able to view and look at other professions and how they function and share that knowledge and wealth with each other, just results in better team satisfaction. So being able to understand another clinician's role and responsibility, I think can make us all better clinicians within ourselves. So moving more into the way that we implement this here in Southern Cross Care in our health and wellness sites, I just wanted to give a summary of the way that a client would come to us, and then the processes towards that multidisciplinary approach. So from the get-go, from an initial assessment, there's always going to be a full health summary and an assessment of that client, depending on what discipline they're seeing first up. That assessment is going to include all SMART-based goals and just assessing the needs of that client, and right from the get-go, taking into account whether they might need help with strength, balance, home support, social-based input, foot care, and holistic well-being. So right from the start, we're being able to assess whether what we can do for them within our discipline, but then also what we can do for the in the wider aspect of it through other disciplines that we have. So moving down there, with obviously after an assessment, the clinician can give that delivered treatment as indicated and as set by those goals of the client and the assessed need. But right with that, looking at where that inter-referral can take place, so where there might be a gap in that client's health and where another clinician can really come in and be able to help in addition. So following that targeted treatment or an inter-referral, it's about maintaining a pathway where we're monitoring, making sure that exercise, pain management, social engagement, just overall function is maintained, and we have processes for being able to manage that too. So this is just our support plan. It's a nice tool that we've implemented recently just as a way to give a snapshot to a client that has been referred, and that referring clinician can get a good idea of this client through looking at this support plan. So first and foremost, it gives the goals of that initial assessing clinician and their plans and recommendations all in aligned and worked with that client to develop those. And then right there, we're able to start thinking about where a referral can take place. And it can give that more information up the top with any barriers that might exist with communication, cognition, functional sensory needs, which can just help that referring clinician be able to have an idea of this client and then work towards bettering their goals as soon as they get to them. We found just putting a small about me as well is really important, just for building initial rapport can really be helpful when that clinician's seeing someone new after building that initial assessment. Okay, so with that internal referral process, so this is where a client would come, see an initial clinician, and then they're wanting to refer to another clinician. We use our Google platform and a simple Google Doc referral system, which is really nice, easy way to work through the booking process. So it involves just a simple Google sheet where we're putting the client's details in, what funding stream or program they might be coming from, referring to and from which discipline, just to give that specific information, what location, whether they're based inside on a clinic or in the home, a simple reason for that referral, and then any other relevant information that could be placed on there. So once that referral is generated, it goes onto a Google spreadsheet, which our rosterers have full access to, and then that booking can be made from that spreadsheet if they haven't already been made at the reception after the initial assessment. And after that booking has been made, the initial assessing clinician can give a written or verbal handover to that next clinician, just to have a good idea, along with that support plan from before. I wanted to move a bit more into the exercise pathway, given it's a lot of what we see when they're coming to health and wellness sites here, predominantly with physio and exercise physiologists taking up a lot of the staffing and the allied health team. We have a strong exercise focus, and we do that through this pathway where we're able to identify from the start whether a client might be more higher functioning or lower functioning. And we just use a simple grip dynamometer strength at the beginning to determine that. So for over 30 kilograms for a male, over 20 kilograms for a female to be higher functioning. And with that higher functioning assessment, it just allows for a bit more of a challenging validated tool. So assessing more range of motion, endurance, upper lower body strength and agility, and offers that more range for improvement for those higher functioning clients. And for a lower functioning client, completing a short physical performance battery, a bit of a lower functioning assessment, and then undertaking some cognitive measures as we identify that those lower functioning clients are more potentially at risk for mental or cognitive issues. Not to say that we couldn't definitely be doing that with a higher functioning client if indicated there as well. So that just gives a nice way for us to begin our exercise pathway for a client. And with that specifics more with the low and high functioning, the low there on the left with the short physical performance battery, detailing 4-meter walk, standing balance, repeated chair rises, and those cognitive measures at the bottom. And then on the right, the seniors fitness test, so a little bit more high functioning with 30-second repeat chair stands, bicep curls, some flexibility testing there, and some endurance measures with 6-meter walk and 2-minute step tests, and then agility with the timed up and go there as well. So that just gives a nice simple way to start that assessment pathway. After that assessment, we place clients onto a review schedule, so they're able to continue along that pathway. And after 6 weeks from their initial assessment, they will have a review, and then 6 months ongoing from there. So we're able to keep an eye on that client when they're not obviously within their classes, for example, an opportunity to give that review. If they've had any changes in their health, their function, or their goals, we're able to give that platform from them. Not that we're not ongoingly checking within the classes that they're attending. If there's something like a change in health triggers an earlier review, we can always put that into place as well. Just giving an insight into some of the classes that we do run at our health and wellness centres. So at the foremost, our Stronger Today program, which is our general strength, fitness, conditioning, balance-based program. All clients with individually based programs on the HUR equipment, as well as in free weights or functional training. And then a lot of different offerings such as Pilates, balance, Parkinson's, hand therapy, hydrotherapy, boxing, Tai Chi, Chi ball, fitball drumming, and a dance class as well. So a really nice wide array of offerings, which gives clients that might not be as inclined to joining a strength or fitness based session to start with, a bit of variety. But we would always try and encourage where suitable for clients to be building into a Stronger Today session where appropriate. And also including social health is a really important factor. So we're building on classes such as I Create, which is one of our art classes, and Gather, which is a social support and social group. Just a couple more pictures there. On the left, one of our Stronger Today groups, the hand therapy on the top right there, and then one of the hydrotherapy pools in the bottom right. So moving into that maintenance phase, obviously within that review schedule, that would be considered within that maintenance phase. The clients are going to be monitored by those taking the classes, who are often our exercise scientists or exercise physiologists, and they're able to give those appropriate progressions to the client to build towards their goals and give progression where needed. And they can be guided by exercise physiologists, physios as needed. And then with that review schedule too. For those that might have complex health backgrounds or significant recent changes in their health, we have the potential to case conference. So a weekly meeting where all allied health on site are able to get together and table certain clients. They could be initial or ongoing that have had major recent changes in their health, and just give that platform for a multidisciplinary discussion and approach, which will always result in an action plan, whether that's a new referral, whether that's a change in program or structure. It just gives that opportunity to have that discussion, and I've found a really beneficial way for working in a team and getting new ideas for a client you might have been seeing for a little while, being able to recognize where else they can be helped by another clinician that has a different set of skills. Just a little bit specifically about me from my background as a physio, working very closely alongside exercise physiologists here. I found myself with a strong interest in exercise for management of all kinds of conditions, but at the forefront it'll always be around giving appropriate advice, education, being able to reassure, build rapport, and then even challenge beliefs of certain clients when necessary. I like to provide education where necessary for pain, musculoskeletal disorders, cardiovascular and neurological conditions. And within our population, in that older adults, we often see those comorbidities that are coming in quite complex fashions. Always promoting general movement and that graded exposure or integration to exercise where appropriate, and then using manual therapy as well where appropriate, and being able to link in with services such as massage to be able to give that symptomatic relief or ease of pain and discomfort when necessary. So a bit with the external referral process, so Tim will be able to delve a little bit further into this as it links in with some of those funding streams. But similar to that internal referral process, we're able to use a Google document to refer externally. So with the umbrella organisation of Southern Cross having not just health and wellness, but retirement living, home care packages, restorative care, community transitions, and even community respite or buddy support. We've got this capacity to look at the person or the client as a whole, and not just treat their health and wellness, but also treat their home setting, their function at home, their ability to receive support where needed. And it's a really valuable tool to be able to link in with the rest of the organisation and be able to provide that holistic model of care. So just kind of surmising with the client journey. So for the most part, we will always be thinking about that multi or interdisciplinary approach from the get-go, from that initial assessment, being able to comprehensively review the health and function, providing that targeted treatment, referring where needed, providing that case conferencing where needed, being able to bounce off of other professions, refer to other professions where needed, and then being able to maintain a client's physical, social health just through regular review and the case conferencing, as we've touched on as well. So we like to really pride ourselves on being able to give that comprehensive model of care to a client, and we, in my opinion, the importance of that multidisciplinary approach cannot really be understated. So we will continue to really reflect that, and it shows in the wide array of clinicians that we have at each of our sites. So yeah, I think for the most part, we'll have some questions, as Tuuri said at the end. So I might hand back to Tuuri, and then I think Tim will be talking after that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. Great talks. I really like I have tons of questions if no one else has. I know there's already one question, but let's do all the questions towards the end. So I think without further ado, I will introduce you to our next speaker, who, if anyone, have you been listening to our webinars before, you've seen him before, or maybe in one of the conferences in the past years. So our next speaker is Dr. Tim Henwood, who is now the Health and Group Manager for Health and Wellness. So Tim is a special population exercise physiologist with a wide research publication record on targeted exercise programs for adults over 65 years of age. He really has a specific interest in older adults with a complex healthcare needs. Tim has a great research track record of looking really at the progression in community and has a great understanding of strength training. He is a very strong advocate for targeted exercise and therapy, and really with the correct exercise prescription, even the oldest and the most unhealthy adults can be re-abled back to better health and well-being. So Tim really has years of both research and clinical knowledge on the top, and it's fantastic to have him sharing his thoughts on the funding. Again, I would call it an alphabet jungle, but he really gets it well. So thank you, Tim, so much, and the stage is yours.
All right, thank you, Tuuri. Always want to check everybody can see my slides. I can see them, so let's forge on, shall we? So today I'm going to talk to you guys a lot about the variety of funding models that are available very specifically in the Australian arena to help with funding health and wellness programs for older adults. So again, I reiterate, all the funding options I will talk about are specific to the Australia and not to anybody else. I thought I'd reiterate a little bit back on what Nick said. We're a very health orientated service. We're quite a broad service as well, and we, for Southern Cross Care, support the preventative reablement and restorative care services for community within the organisation. As Nick said, you know, the stuff we do would not be possible without our multidisciplinary approach. And in doing that, we've actually gained quite a strong reputation, and also quite a large number of people have continued to come through our doors. And that's very much what I'm going to talk about, is how we make it affordable for them to come through our doors. So just looking at our services, the health and wellness centres that Nick described before, we also have community respite, where we have small gymnasiums in there as well. And they have social programs that top up our health and wellness centre programs to give people that social engagement. And I'll talk to these two programs specifically, community transition care and short-term restorative care, later. because they're specifically government funded programs that are very, very well funded and have very, very great outcomes for older adults who want to continue living in the community. So this is the space we're working in, where we're taking those people, and I think Nick showed this slide before, we're taking those people who have started to approach or fall below their functional well-being, a little bit harder for them to look after themselves, all the way through to verging on a inability to look after themselves, and that movement into a permanent care setting. And we help them push back to a higher level of function. And the changes we see are very, very diverse for lots of different groups of people. But you can also understand within that group of people coming in, we have everything from self-funded retirees who have lots of money in the bank and $1 million houses, all the way through to people who are living pension check to pension check. So getting them in the front door is quite a challenge in itself, and then often making it affordable when they come through the front door. This is a little bit about our model, independent of what level of socioeconomic or what background education or what your starting point is. We use this pathway. It ties into what Nick said before. Entry comes from a variety of places. There's an overarching health assessment that then leads to a care planning process in the multidisciplinary arena. And then we plan the client's journey out from there. And if the client falls off that pathway, we bring them back to that case conferencing to readapt the pathway to meet their needs. So very much about what my talk's about. How do we get them in the front door, and how do we make it affordable for them to get in the front door? And I'm going to talk across all the different listings that are on the bottom of the page here. Full cost recovery, the My Aged Care system, Department of Veterans Affairs funding, private health insurance, Medicare opportunities, brokered services to external providers, and then working with the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So you can see all these listed down the side, and I will now start to break these down component by component. The first one, of course, is just full cost recovery. When the client comes through the front door, they pay the service fee for the service, and then that's nice and easy, nice and simple. You're banking that money without having to worry about claiming outputs in the background or Medicare in the background or any of that sort of stuff. The money just flows straight in. We use this across all our services. So we use it for group-based services. We use it for one-on-one therapy on-site and off-site. We also use it for respite, where people are now paying full cost recovery for a respite service instead of using any government-based funding. So it's a nice, simple way to go, and it allows you to set your prices according to what your service outgoings are. Whereas as we start to go through some of these other programs, you'll see there's a little bit of manipulating to work out what your service price is and what you need to capture in the gap fee in relation to what the government or health insurers might be giving to you. So the first one to talk about is Medicare. Now, listed the chronic disease management plans, the Medicare, the NDIS items, and the diabetes type 2 management plan, because they're the ones most commonly that we utilise in the Southern Cross Care Health and Wellness clinics. And for most of the other aged care, other providers using Medicare, these are the most common plans as well. So both of these are GP or specialist referred. So somebody needs to go talk to their doctor, have a diagnosis that can be modified by an allied health input. They need to make a plan with their doctor, and then they need to make a targeted referral to a location where they can get those, the chronic disease management plan, Medicare rebatable services. And they also need to work with a clinician that has a Medicare recognised number. Now, a lot of you guys who are out there and you're allied health clinicians working in the field, you will realise that you need a Medicare number per site that you work across. And that even extends to, so we've got a whole lot of that going on. For each one of our allied health clinicians, they have Medicare numbers for each of the 3 large sites that we have here. And those numbers are then listed into our HICAPS machines. The Medicare pays a upfront fee, and in a lot of cases, clinicians might bulk bill for their services. We don't tend to do that. We actually bulk bill the first service for the client, which is generally an assessment service, and then we charge them a $27 gap for the 4 subsequent chronic disease management plans, and we just charge them a $10 flat rate for their diabetes type 2 group-based services. The reason we charge a larger gap and we don't actually just do a bulk bill is because we service very differently to a lot of other clinics out there that are basing their services on the Medicare or the private health insurance space. We tend to over-service, so some of these services only need to be 20 minutes in delivery. We actually are more inclined to do 30-minute physio and 45-minute to an hour-long exercise physiology services. And within those services as well, we are dedicated to the client. We don't do any administration or note-keeping during that period of time. Medicare doesn't cover therapy, so we use massage therapy as a solid complementary therapy for things like post-physiotherapy, post-exercise physiology. But Medicare won't cover massage as a therapy. The chronic disease management plans is available to everybody, and they can get up to 5 Medicare rebatable services per year. And if you're in residential aged care, and this is a very unexplored place at this point in time, they're actually extended out to 10 Medicare rebatable services per year. In my experience, in the residential aged care space, most of the initial 5 are used to just support podiatry input alone. But as we go towards new and modified models in the aged care space, I think those 10 Medicare rebatable chronic disease management plan services will be an improved opportunity for people to get exercise and physiotherapy to work on their health and wellness, because the ANAC doesn't, the new funding tool doesn't have a lot of that provision in there. Now, I haven't gone through the whole list of all the NDIS items because, believe you me, it's long and convoluted. Some of it's for planning, some of it's for service delivery. There's quite a lot of it in there, and you can access it to do your own research through the NDIS website. But there is also some of the other ones that might interest the audience today. There's lots of mental health plans as well, where people can get up to 20 Medicare rebatable services for socially and cognitive support, supporting allied health engagement. And then there's a team care arrangement similar to the chronic disease management plan, but that's a physio GP specialist referral pathway, so a bit more of the multidisciplinary space. And of course, like all the, or 90% of the funding model opportunities that I'll talk to today, they have quite stringent associated compliance and reporting requirements that we all need to adhere to. The second one is private health insurance. So the good thing about private health insurance is there's no referral necessary. Pretty much anybody who has private health insurance can walk into a clinic of their preference, and they can swipe their private health insurer card, and then they can just pay the difference between what the private health insurer will pay and the gap fee for what the service fee costs. So you commonly find 2 types of private health insurance. The hospital's only pretty much useless for this audience because I think we're really focused on that clinic-based service delivery. So the ones we're looking for here are hospital plus extras. Everybody gets a different plan. So the example I'll show after this slide is related to Bupa. Bupa have 3 layers of extras covers. Some of them have the same funding, for example, physio across 3 layers, but then you might pay more in your premiums, and that might affect the way you can claim and how regularly you can claim. It's very hard to generalize because every health insurer is different and every one of their extras plans are different as well. So quite commonly, and if I go to the next slide, again, remembering associated compliance and reporting, quite stringent for health providers to make sure that you're doing the right thing by the insurance claims and by their clients. So if you look at a Bupa example, you can see the top top extras, the mid-range extras, and the basic extras. Now, this is a little bit old. Bupa has made a modification on this since then. You can see the sorts of things that are highlighted because they're specific to the Southern Cross Care Clinic that we have. So we can use things like gym memberships, exercise classes, exercise physiology, podiatry, dietetics, remedial massage, physio, and OT. Each one of them has varying funding levels. And what will happen is a client might have somewhere between 5 and 25 times that they can claim against and draw down on the allocated amount that sits within each of them. And again, it varies as well. So for example, we've just had experience with clients who've talked to Bupa about doing physiotherapy, and they might give them $60 back out of our $80 service fee, but they might only give them $12 on remedial massage back out of our $80 service fee. The best way to go, if you do have a high caps machine, you can swipe and question about what the client out of pocket is, but then the best way for the client to always go is just to consult with their private health insurance provider to get a real accurate outcome of what their out of pockets might be and how long that might last. Next thing is talking about Department of Veterans Affairs. The two funded cards, oops, white cared, yeah, it's okay, see my typo now. The two funded cards that are relevant to the audience that we're talking about here are the gold card, which is issued to put bluntly, veterans and servicemen who have been in a theatre of war, and to persons who've been in a theatre of war or have incurred an impairment or a disability as part of their service to the Australian Defence Force. And that's the top tier card. And then there's the white card that was awarded to persons who've had some level of impairment in service with the ADF and or other allied nations. So again, this relies upon a GP referral. It covers a large variety of allied health provision. And the big difference between this and things like Medicare and stuff is you cannot charge a gap fee. The dollar value that DBA tells you is the dollar value that you can claim against any of those services. There is some providers out there who make a real good go of DBA funding through timing their services well, the amount of services they're doing, the consistency of the services they're working with. And in South Australia, DBA actually have dedicated clinics to work in that space. Treatment must be progressive. So specifically, or regularly for all clinicians, the treatment must be progressive and cannot just be ongoing for the sake of being ongoing. And this is something which really came out for exercise physiologists in the past, that it cannot just be group maintenance session. DBA will fund ongoing progressive treatment, but it will not just fund ongoing maintenance treatment. So NDIS is not a space that we're actually a provider of. So we aren't a recognised NDIS provider. So I probably don't know so much about the nitty gritty of the NDIS, but we do a lot of work with brokered services. So people who've either got their plan with an NDIS recognised provider, or they're self-managing their plans. The plans and the according budgets are set up against the client's individual needs, and that's quite a rigorous process for the client to get to that space. They need to look, they need to get letters of diagnosis that then can lead to assessments that then can lead to a discussion with the NDIS about what their funding might look like. And then there's the review and the regular review of the funding to see if it's too much or too little. The funding comes into two types: the capacity building, which is the large part, and that's all about integration and utilisation and trying to help that individual be a part of society and live a normal, fruitful and full and healthy life. And then the capability building is a smaller provisional side. Yeah, so the smaller side of it. The capacity building is where things like exercise physiology provision sits, social engagement provision sits, those sorts of things. So with the clients that we've been working with today, and we're getting more and more people working with us in that space, we tend to work a lot with exercise delivery, physiotherapy delivery in that holistic space as well. So the services that deliver must be aligned to the funding the client has received and budgeted to, and again, the provision of reporting is there as well. So My Aged Care is probably the biggest beast in what we'll talk about now. There's 2 layers to My Aged Care: entry-level stuff, which is the Commonwealth Home Support Program. That is outputs over 13 different types of service outputs, and I'll show you what they are soon. That can be awarded by a regional assessment team, the RAS service, or awarded by an ACAT team. The ACAT tend to deal with the high-end aged care provisional service, and the RAS tend to deal with the entry-level stuff. So if we go on and we look at some of this stuff more specifically, so the Commonwealth Home Support Program is, as I mentioned, it's an entry-level program for people who are starting to experience changes in their well-being. It's about enabling clients to be exposed to a variety of different aged care services, help them remain in their home for extended periods of time. And we actually use it quite well as a health literacy piece to actually help clients understand what's available out there in the aged care sphere, and as well as prepare them for what they should be putting into their home care packages. You can see the 13 different types of service funding, the service types available on the page there. The ones that are not highlighted are the ones that Southern Cross Care do not supply. And you can also see, oh, is respite on there? Where's respite? So respite care, I haven't broken down. There's 3 layers within respite care that we use for day support, night support, and then social engagement. It's a bit of a complex system. The way it works is that each provider who has CHSP has a certain amount of outputs for that different funding type, and then they can utilise that amount of outputs across the year, and the funding they have, which comes in quarterly, is then allocated as a dollar value per service output. And if we have a quick look at the outputs that Southern Cross Care have for allied health and therapy, we have about just over 27,000, closer to 27,500 outputs currently. And that equates to about $2 million in government funding. And so each one of those outputs is around about the $72, $75 mark. And then we draw down on that funding as we deliver services against those outputs. And basically 1 output is 1 hour of service. What we have learned though is the government hasn't released a lot of CHSP into population for the last 4 or 5 years. And so there's a lot of other providers out there who are like we are doing currently, as you can see in the 2021 column. We are using more CHSP outputs to service, sustain and bring new clients into site than we actually have allocated to us at this point in time. So the next one to talk about is the home care packages. Again, this is a big step up program for a lot of older adults. And in some cases, your lower levels, your 1s and 2s, and you can see the funding and how the funding increases as the lower level increases. It's actually not great value for clients in comparison to staying on CHSP. Home care packages limit your availability to use certain other services, like we'll talk about short-term restorative care in a moment. Also, with home care packages comes things like you have client contributions, daily fees, income testing that then determines how much of your daily fee will actually be. So a lot of clients for the low-level packages might actually choose to not take their packages. The other trouble with packages is you may well have heard that they take a long time for the client to actually be awarded one. They might be assessed and given one, but it might take 12 months for that package to come through. Sometimes their package is at a lower level than they've actually been awarded. And over that 12 months, their decline has been so great that they might actually need a higher level of package than they were originally awarded. But the government is trying to work hard in this space at this point in time to release more packages into aged care. The next two programs we'll talk about, short-term restorative care and transition care, are really working in that restorative space to help clients push back into a higher level of independence. Short-term restorative care, the aim of that program is to capture people before they've had a hospital entry, or capture people before they've had large changes in their disability, which puts them at risk of hospital entry or residential aged care, where residential aged care funding can be actually quite high, and when it's ongoing, very, very expensive against the government budget. The short-term restorative care is ACAT assessed, then the referral comes down and providers have an 8-week program to deliver. The aim of the program is to do a multidisciplinary intervention that impacts the social, physical and mental well-being of the client and pushes them up to a higher level of well-being after that 8-week service. Everybody sort of does it differently, and there's about 2,500 packages nationally, and Southern Cross Care only holds a small percentage of those, but we deliver our program in a very holistic manner in exactly the same sort of way that you heard Nick talk about the way we deliver our health and wellness services. Multidisciplinary case conferencing, always looking at helping that client reach their highest and most achievable goals. I've given you a listing of what the eligibility criteria are for the short-term restorative care. And a lot of it you'd probably find quite reasonable. So they can't have a home care package. They can't have been in a transition care in the past 6 months, which I'll talk to next. They can't have been in hospital for the past 3 months for an entry which was related to why they're getting the STRC, and they must have that declining functional wellbeing. With the short-term restorative care and with the transition care program, we charge the client a $50 out-of-pocket contribution, and that helps us make sure that we're not going to go outside the availability, what the government is actually funding us to for that program. So transition care, just finishing off on the government one. So in contrast to the other three services, which all are Department of Health regulated, transition care actually sits with its government funding, but it's allocated by each one of the state health departments. Again, it's about helping people who have gone into hospital and had an extended stay, get back on their feet, get back to home and get well again. Both the STRC and the TCP programs are funded by the government to up to about $210 per day. So quite good funding, but that's also got to be used for your travel and your care needs and your administration fees and your coordination fees and all other bits and pieces, and clinician wages and times that you might be putting in to support that client. The STRC, in contrast to the TCP, in contrast to the STRC, sorry, too many acronyms. I think Tori mentioned that earlier, is a 12-week program. It's a bit more specific in the types of allied health service delivery, and that you can do physio and OT. And we pride ourselves on our program. Again, we take that holistic approach and we have that low level of return to hospital and low incidence of falls. So just in finishing this barrage of different funding models, any of you guys who are working in the with your own clinics or working in a clinical environment, it will be very hard for you guys to set yourself up as a My Aged Care provider. That's really set up for the aged care providers who are supporting home care packages and things like that. But there is an incredible growing opportunity to broker services with other organisations who don't have strong allied health teams. And we're actually doing a lot of brokering ourselves now with other external providers who have home care packages with clients but don't have a strong allied health team. So they've come to us, and can we supply their allied health services? Can we supply their community respite services? And we do that at a premium to what our normal service prices are. There is generally an agreement between the organisation, and that also extends to agreement on the service delivery, the pricing, all the way through to our COVID safe police checks and all those bits and pieces. And then we just invoice those providers at the end of every month. So it works out quite nicely for us. And a lot of that is us guys, clients who actually have taken their home care package somewhere else but want to keep coming to our health and wellness services. And then the other way street is where we've engaged with stakeholders. They've seen that we've got a very good product. They don't have that allied health depth themselves. So they've come to us to supply those services to them. So just one more slide to go. Some of the other things that that we're using to better fund our health and wellness service are things like BlockBased Programming. So we're doing, the 6-week courses. We do everything from golf to prostate cancer. And we're now currently looking to push some of that into the digital space so that we can roll these services out on a more national basis rather than just being restricted to our catchment areas around some of our health and wellness centres. We've started to grow our telehealth offering. Now, I've always had that bubbling away in the background since the COVID lockdowns in March of last year. But as we've progressed, we've had more and more uptake in that space. We've also engaged with other PHNs and councils and things to actually utilise that as part of the grant funding process. We continue to look at grant funding opportunities, and one of the things that we drive as a large allied health and therapy provider is a lot of projects. And we have at any point in time 20 projects going. So we're always looking for grant funding to support the projects, support our project officers, and we utilise that. We negotiate for that funding quite well so that we have contingency plans. We're making sure we're covering our overheads and our on costs and not selling ourselves short. And one of the other things to be aware of as well is there is change in the community aged care funding model. Now, we don't currently know what it looks like at this point in time, but in July of 2023, we know we'll go to a new community aged care funding model, and everything that I mentioned before with the home care packages, the Commonwealth Home Support Program, and the short-term restorative care will be bundled into one service provision. So I'm not sure if there is opportunity for external providers to jump into that space, but as I reiterate what I said about the brokering, I think there is a growing opportunity for good allied health providers to work with aged care providers who don't have the depth of a aged care team. And the other thing which is worth mentioning as well is, a very common, but something we've only just started to do recently is introduce a cancellation fee. And what we've found is that people, if they cannot meet our guidelines for cancellation, they've actually been very happy to pay the cancellation fee because they appreciate the work that we're doing and they appreciate the costs of us running our services. And that ties back to some of the stuff that Nick said before. We don't just teach people health literacy, but we also develop strong relationships with them so that it's a value add to our service. They look at our service and they think, well, this is how much it's worth. I want to keep coming, so this is how much it's worth. So that's all. Oh, no, sorry, hit the wrong button. So that's all I have for you guys, just besides finish up to say thanks for listening. It is a big, I've given you a lot of information, and there's obviously also a lot of rules and regulations and policies that go with each one of those different funding pathways. But, aged care is here to stay. And as we drive forward, the government is becoming more and more aware of the reable space as a driver of well-being for older adults. So it's a great time to be looking at aged care as an opportunity to support your business, whether you're working in a clinic or as an individual provider.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tim. I did allow you to go a bit over time because I thought it was just great. No, I thought it was great conversation, so I wasn't going to butt in. And I think it's such an important topic, and I think it's also that we all are going to be living longer. So, you know, so we're not, before people were 65 were considered old, and now we have people living past their hundreds. And many people are healthy because of this. So I think it's good that we're looking after everybody's health and providing these things. Now, thank you both for your talks. We do have a few questions. Nick was very nice, and thank you. Now, Nick, now we can see you. Before we didn't. So it's all right, you know, but it was a surprise for everyone. It's like, oh, what is he going to look like? Because it's always good to see the face. Now, we have a few questions. Everyone was asking about cognition. Nick already responded. So the measures we use are the geriatric depression scale and anxiety index, along with the vitality scale. I'd like to elaborate on these ones as well, because there is so much research now in strength training, and especially we know that we can reverse mild cognitive decline. And also there's a lot of talks about dementia, especially protein intake and vitamin C intake and all these things. Does your allied health team also then, how do you attack cognition? Is it just as part of the aging, you know, the issues that might appear, or do you have sort of like early onset dementia groups? So how does your allied health team tackle that? And is there any funding for this?
Well, we definitely come across a lot of settings with clients with dementia and intellectual disabilities. While we don't have set up streams for that, we often like to engage the family, the carers where involved, if there's issues with the client engaging themselves. And we have built upon some lower, quieter functional groups where someone with a cognitive or a cognitive impairment may be able to function better in that way. If we're looking at the early stages of assessment of that cognition, we'd be looking to implement or involve occupational therapists who can do further cognitive testing or cognitive measures to get a better picture of that. And then we can work together with the family, the carers, to be able to keep them engaged, and then even furthermore so going into day respite or community respite to support the family and support the client as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As I said, and as Nick said, this reaches across all of our programs. Typically, our community respite guys with dementia or some level of cognitive decline, and we have an exercise scientist. We have small gyms in each one of those services. Our buddy clients, who are the community pick up and take out for an adventure for the day, a lot of those guys use their buddy service to access our health and wellness services, and they come into clinic. And we definitely haven't cured dementia, but we see some amazing cognitive improvements in clients who not only don't have those basic presentations like afternoon wandering, sundowners, aggressive behaviours, but one example I always use is we've got a couple of guys who started to lose their language and their ability to put sentences together. But with a day in our respite centres, with our exercise engagement, with our social engagement, we see more and more that these people can actually verbalise what's on their mind to a greater extent.
That's fantastic. Then we had questions for Marie also that Nick already answered. The next first one is, are you likely to extend the Better for Life program to Queensland facilities? That's for Tim.
Yes, so I've just been trying to type that one, but I'd rather talk to it because I type very slow and can't concentrate at the same time. Ray, I would love to move it up to Queensland. There's actually, we've had sporadic discussions with Southern Cross Care, because the way Southern Cross Care works is it's a very state-based. We're a national organisation, but we're state-based in our service delivery. So the CEO for Southern Cross Care Queensland, Jason Eldering, he's always looking at health and wellness options, and I talk to him every now and again. I used to work with him a lot when I was up in Queensland myself about better service provision. So it's worth keeping your eyes on local areas and seeing if Southern Cross Care are doing that. there's already some great programs like Ballyclara up in the Bay, and what can I think? What's their name, Tori? I'm having a mental blank.
I think Ari is actually the champion, and I think the best solution I can do is, because Ari is in Queensland, that's not even my state, but I think if you can send an email to us, we're happy to provide, the client, all the facilities that are there to go through, because there are some amazing, like serious champion stories of even very highly advanced, cognitive function issues and really recovery with strength training, and the diet is a big thing about that. The second question was, have you had many clients who, due to intellectual disability or dementia, are simply unwilling to participate, even though they would be physically capable? And I think Nick has already responded, but I think that's every physio's, I think that's sort of the whole thing, like how to get people exercising. That is always a challenge. And I think there's all these tricks of the trade that go, and Nick also said that they work closely with the family or carers and to engage everyone there, and also have the lower functioning classes available. But I think that it's always the questions, like how to make everybody exercise. And I think if we knew that, everybody would be healthy. But I'll let you both respond even more if you have something to add to that.
I think just adding, the main thing I've found through the experience, if we're able to maybe change the setting or the environment with that client, whether that's maybe working to exercise with them in the home, where they're familiar, where they're able to maybe have some different level of cognition, that might be a setting where we can get more improvement. And then just slow transitions to new environments, especially in a busy gym setting, can be a bit overwhelming. So being wary of that, working with one-on-ones rather than a group setting if indicated too.
Yeah, I agree. We spend a lot of time trying to work on what we call appreciative inquiry. So trying to work out what's meaningful to the client. And once we can identify what's meaningful, we can sometimes even hide exercise and social engagement participation in things that they might love. Like with the buddy program, again, one of the typical things that'll happen a lot is people might not want to engage in exercise, but we take them and their little dog down to the local dog park, and we walk around the dog park, and we look at the flowers, and we look at the what's going on in that space. And so we're hiding exercise that they wouldn't have otherwise done into a level of engagement that they're actually enjoying. So trying to hide it like that. In this space here, we definitely make things appealing. It must be very daunting for whether somebody's got cognitive decline or not. If they've never been to a gymnasium before and they're coming down for their initial assessment. And so when they come, they see faces that are similar to them. They see people dressed the same. They see people having a good time. The music's appropriate. Everything's set up to be appealing and welcoming, as opposed to distancing and frightening.
That's fantastic. Now, I had actually I know we almost probably have a little bit over time, but I've taken quite a lot of notes during your talks. And one thing that I really liked about your model that you had, for the flow diagram, is that it was very patient-centered. And then I like the fact that the initial pathways were quite divided into what your condition is, that who do you see first? But then the fact that you have the case conference where you then discuss amongst everyone and then decide together how to move forward. I had one question though, like you showed there was a special exercise pathway for geriatric area. As we know with the community care, we often talk about the 50 plus, and the 50 plus are a lot more impacted by inactivity because we all just sit on our computers, especially after working from home for 1.5 years with the gyms closed. So, as an additional note, I really think there will be an increase in inactivity-related increase of chronic diseases and just sarcopenia on its own. Will you have other pathways to chronic diseases, or will you have some, because it's going to be hitting us hard, whether there's going to be diabetes or sarcopenia, something where what are the pathways looking like for these groups, considering I'm quite sure there's going to be more of them in the 50 plus and the working people who are still working? What do those pathways look like, and who will they meet, and what kind of services can you provide, for example, for diabetes?
I think as far as pathways, the higher low functioning entry level there is just for a basic way to get into that exercise progression. As far as the variety and the diversity of offerings, with recognizing other conditions with a Parkinson's-based group, osteoarthritis-based groups, and those block programs that we can tap into for those with different conditions. It's going to be hard to always put a blanket over inactivity and then have a specific pathway for that. But if we can specify, I guess, the relevant conditions and the relevant barriers to a client entering, we can move towards that.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I think some of this lays with the government and the PHNs. I think we need better health literacy messages. I think we need more broad scoping education about what is a good health pathway, and we need media to change as well about what does healthy look like. Like, healthy doesn't look like, skinny and running 100 kilometers a week. We need to break down a lot of this so that people are comfortable getting into health pathways. People do see the value of getting into those health pathways as well, and trying to tie it in and value it as part of their life, rather than checking out of work at the end of the day, going home and sitting on the couch. And I know it's not easy to get you 150 minutes a week, but people need to be encouraged by government, their local members, their GPs, a vast raft of people to get them into better health pathways. I think a lot of the audience and a lot of the people who Nick and I work with, we're already working well in that space, that health literacy space, but it's the noise that people are hearing from around and what they consider as normal that really needs to change to help us all as a society get onto better health pathways.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the COVID years, not even year, but COVID 1.5 years, especially here in Melbourne, I think they've been quite an awakening. And I think the situation really will get worse because there's been inactivity, and we know how inactivity relates into chronic diseases and sarcopenia and the whole protein synthesis. So I think it is a big learning, and again, we'll continue our webinars, and that's sort of one of my dream webinars for next year is the exercise medicine, and really hopefully spreading the word of how we can attack these common diseases by living well, eating well, and exercising well, and really not just going for a run, because it's great for some people, but not for everyone. And for chronic diseases, it's definitely about the muscles. And I mean, our muscle, like we discussed in the previous webinar, it's our largest storage bank. Your muscles is your reserve bank for your protein that's going to help you in recovery from illnesses and energy and everything else. But let's not go back there. That was the previous webinar. As we are 8 minutes over time, I think it's time for me to say a big thank you to our speakers. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for running great programs. Thank you for funding. And I want to thank you to everyone who's joined us today. I really can't believe it's been now 2 years that we were running this, considering it was my little lockdown activity to create these. And I'm grateful for everyone who's joined and all the speakers. We will be back. I'm just going to check. There's one more Q&A. Oh, it was just thank you. That's all right. Good. I was just checking. Is someone going to squeeze in before we press the leave button? Thank you, everyone, and have a great Christmas. Have a great end of the year and holidays, and let's us all hope that next year will be better. And if not COVID-free, then COVID normal. And thank you to everyone for joining us. And we will see you next year again. All right. Thanks. And thank you, Nick and Tim, again. See you next year. Bye.